On your marks. Get set.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. I've had quite a few questions already, so I'm going to start with them, but if you have a question you want to ask, just reply to Twitter, social media account, and I'll get around to answering that. So the first question I had it's quite relevant. It's what are your thoughts on the planned 2022 competition schedule? And I kind of was waiting for a couple of weeks for this to come out and see what was going to happen with the Commonwealth Games and the World Champs, etc. And to be honest, when it first got released, I was a bit shocked. Like 3 major championships within the space of 6 weeks. That's kind of carnage. But for me, I've not chatted with my coach yet, but I would look to do all 3 of them. Opportunities over the years that it would be a shame to actively say I don't want to do one. The Oregon World Champs is going to be incredible. A home Commonwealth Games, there's absolutely no way I can even dream of missing that. And then a European Champs in Munich. Berlin was incredible. The crowd was insane. And I just think it's so hard. It's going to be really hard for athletes to pass up on any of those opportunities. So for me, I'll look to do all 3 and have a bit of fun with it and just love it and see what happens. The next question was from a young pole vault who said, what do you do on off days in training when nothing seems to be working out? And I did think about this a lot because, I absolutely have these days, not very often, but I can definitely recall them. I've come in to do a vault session. I feel a bit flat. I've been looking forward to this vault session all week and I've had thoughts in my mind. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to be really tall at takeoff. I'm going to swing fast. And I come in and I'm just slow on the run and I can't execute the way that I want. And it is really difficult as an athlete when that happens, but you've just got to, what I tend to do is I come home from the training session and I think, what has contributed to that session not being as good? And if it's, I had a really hard session on Monday, which was really good, but it made me tired, then that's okay. But I also tend to write a list of, did I sleep well? Did I eat right? Did I get the necessary rest? Did I do all the right things? And if I did, then there's nothing to change. Just kind of put that session down as, yeah, it didn't go as well as I could have, but I learned a lot. But if you maybe think, I didn't eat very well the day before, then just tweak that for next time. And that's something that you can change. I kind of always say to Scott, when I have an amazing session, when I lift a PB, when I do an amazing vault session, when I run really fast, those sessions are great. And they're great for my feelings. However, you don't really learn much. Whereas those sessions where, things haven't gone right, the vault didn't feel great, you've learned so much from that session. And I think it's just good to bear that in mind. I've had a couple of new questions from Twitter, so thank you very much. Did the period where you were injured give you a different mindset in terms of being an elite athlete? And thanks for that question. I really like talking about my injuries and the things that I've struggled with because it's really important for young kids to learn from that. And alongside doing athletics, I'm quite heavily involved in sports psychology. And one of the things I've worked on is overcoming adversity and actually becoming better in the face of adversity. And a lot of my injuries have contributed to that and made me a better athlete. And like you said, did the period you were injured give you a different mindset? It absolutely did. It made me focus on things that I was weaker at. I remember when I broke my foot, I worked on my core, I worked on my upper body, I worked on all the things that I felt like needed to change. And then when I got back to vaulting, I remember I PB'd by like 40 centimeters because I'd just been working on those things. And I think actually it's quite relevant in terms of what we're experiencing at the minute with the coronavirus is we're not injured. Instead, it's a forced injury. Like I can't pole vault. I can't train the way I'd want to. You know, I'm at home doing circuits and I'm sure everyone else is. And it's kind of like an injury. So why don't we use this period, same as what I'm doing, to better myself? I said on an interview the other day, I'm really, really rubbish at bodyweight exercises, chin-ups, rope climbs, push-ups, anything that requires me to move my own body weight, especially using my arms, I've never been good at. So I've set myself a challenge of every day or every other day, I'm going to work on that. And I've been in my garage doing chin-ups. I've been doing, bubkas on the high bar, just making sure that there's a couple of things that during this period that I can work on to make myself better. A couple of other questions from younger athletes. I had someone say they're under 13 and what is their advice for buying first poles, bags and transport. So if I start with the transport, I'm assuming you're going to be traveling around the UK, so it's important to have a car with roof racks. I'm sure your parents will have a car. It's just important to get a nice safe set of roof racks on there. Make sure you have your poles in a bag or wrapped up in a plastic tube. You can get that from, I remember I got my first one from Travis Perkins, and put the poles in there so they're nice and safe, and then buy some strong ratchets from B&Q to strap them down. Obviously, it's really hard to transport poles as a pole vaulter, but it's really important that you do it safely, just for yourself and other people traveling. In terms of first poles, when you're a young athlete, I would assume it would probably take you about 6 months to even bend the pole. So don't be scared if you go to try the pole vault and there's only this massive pole that you're never going to bend, because the way you learn pole vault is by just using it as a stiff pole and it won't even bend. So don't be scared by that. But then advice for clubs is to get a couple of 3-meter poles, the smallest you can buy. I think if you're working in poundage, it's like you can get 90s, 100 poles, and they're really skinny, really small, and they'll be easy for athletes to bend. So I would suggest that. I've had a couple of questions, and I wanted to spend a bit of time on this about a pole vaulter's mentality and the psychology behind that. And I do actually get asked these questions a lot about like a mental block, and someone said what helps with a mental block. I'm quite lucky in the fact that I've actually never really experienced a significant mental block. I had a little bit of an episode last year which allows me to now relate to a lot of people who have these mental blocks, where I landed back on the track a couple of times in the session. It really scared me and it really shook me up, and it took me a while to build that confidence back. And I think the advice I just give to people, having gone through a little bit of that myself, is the most important thing is having a team or a coach around you that you trust in 100%. So my coach, Scott Simpson, I've worked with him for 8 years, but as soon as I met him, within the first couple of months, I knew that I trusted this guy with my life. And that's really what you're doing as a pole vaulter. It is really dangerous, but if you have a coach that you trust in, there's absolutely nothing scary about it. He's not going to, your coach shouldn't be putting you on a pole that is going to make you land on the track or put you in any danger. And that's really what I rely on. And I think that's something for coaches as well, is the trust between you and an athlete. It's not to be underestimated. It's really important. And for me, if I'm stood at the back of the runway and Scott tells me, change up a pole, move your stands in, move your run up back, I absolutely would never question him. It's without a doubt, that's what I'm going to do, because that's going to make me do a better jump. And as soon as you can build that trust, I have the feeling that all mental blocks will kind of be taken away. Someone said, again, regarding to a mental block, is I'm having a problem when I take off far. I totally, and I'm sure every pole vaulter knows exactly what you mean. There's nothing scarier than coming down and taking off too far and sagging on the pole. Now, the way in which I work with my athlete, I have a couple of athletes that I coach, and one of them comes down and he could take off really close, take off really far, and he's not really sure of where, he doesn't really know where he is right now, which is fine. That's kind of what the process you have to go through as a pole vaulter. And what I kind of say to him is I always bring him in so he feels close, because that way you are learning to be perceptual to the box. So if you bring him in close, there's no way his body and brain is going to let him take off ridiculously close. So what he's going to do is when he gets 6 to 4 strides out, he's going to in his peripheral see the box and alter his strides to take off. And I think that's something, again, for coaches to work on, is if you're having a problem where your takeoff is getting too far, too inconsistent, don't be afraid to pull the run up in, because then you like I say, you're not going to take off with your foot in the box. You're not going to take off at 1 meter and hurt your back. Your body won't let you do that. You need to focus on building the run, and then as you get close to the takeoff, putting your feet down, attacking, and your brain will let you take off in the right place. So for if you're having a problem with taking off far, I think that's what I'd suggest you do. The last one on the mental block, well, I guess it's not really a mental block. The question was, when it's your third attempt at a height, what do you do to relax and not panic? And I've been in quite a few situations actually at really critical moments where I've been on a third attempt. I remember when I broke the British record in Manchester, I'd opened the competition, I was on my third attempt bar. At the London 2017 World Champs, I just cleared 55 and I was on my third attempt at 465 to stay in the competition, and this was at the World Champs. And I mean, there's the amount of pressure that's on your shoulders for a third attempt is crazy, and it's not to be underestimated. When people ask me, like, what do you feel in that moment? It is nerve-wracking. However, what I think about in the moment is getting nervous going to help the situation? No. Is freaking out, getting crazy in my head going to help the situation, or worry? None of those thoughts are going to help me. So I just try and pretend that I'm on my first or second. It's deep breaths and think about what I want to execute. And this actually covers a lot of issues in the pole vault of overthinking. And this is exactly what happens on your third attempt, is you think about, I want to clear the bar, I want to clear the bar. And that's the worst thing that you can do. So what I think about is I'm at the back of the run and I'm thinking, I'm going to be strong for the first 6 steps. And then I'm going to attack for the next however many steps. Then I'm going to take off nice and tall. I'm going to swing really fast. And that, in my head, is how I'm going to clear the bar. So instead of me thinking, the bar's at 465, I really want to clear this, or this is my third attempt, I need to clear this. Instead, I'm thinking, run fast, tall at takeoff, swing. Run fast, tall at takeoff, swing. And that, for me, is how you get over the worry and not panic when you're on a third attempt. And to be honest, on that same regard, it's something that I've trained myself to do over the last 3 years, because I remember when I was in competitions and I'd be thinking, okay, I'm in 10th place. Okay, if I clear this bar, I'm in 6th place. Okay, now if I clear this next bar, I'm in 3rd place. That's exactly the kind of things you should not be thinking about. You think about yourself and the cues that you want to execute, and that's the way in which you're going to jump the high bars. Instead of thinking, I want to jump 490 or I want to jump however high, think about what you're going to do to achieve that. And that seems to work for me. I've got a question here, which is, why are vaulters all happy mates? And to be honest, this is one of the most common questions that I get asked, because I think it's obvious when we're all out there, when we're on social media, that we all get on and there's no animosity. We're all out there just wanting, we all want to do well ourselves, but we all want to do well we all want to see our competitors do well too. And I don't really know what it is that has created that, because I've been competing now since 2011 on like the international scene, and for me it has changed a little bit. I think I would say around 2015, 2016, when you had the likes of, Katerina Stefanidi, Katie Najat, Alicia Newman, Eliza McCartney, even Angelica Sidorova. We've all just, since 2015, 2016, it's just a new group of girls that we all just seem to get on, and it's not fake. And we all sit with each other at breakfast in the Diamond League Hotel the day before the meet. We eat lunch together. We hang out together. I share a room every competition with Katie Najat. We're out there competing against each other, but that's not really the way I see it. The way I see it is I'm out here having fun with all these mates that I've gained over the years. And yeah, of course, I want to jump 490, but I don't want to see these girls jump 4 meters. I want them to also jump 490. So I can't really tell you exactly what it is, but for me, it's a nice thing that we're all friends, and it makes me enjoy my experiences much better. Okay, let's have a look at some of the questions. Why do you think field eventers don't get the coverage they deserve on TV? Athletics fans find this frustrating when they're expecting to see the likes of yourself compete, but all we get is a few random clips if we're lucky. How can this change? So that's a really good question, and I think I tend to ask myself this a lot. Pole vault is such an exciting event. And it's not just pole vault. You've got the high jump, the triple jump. It's kind of all the field events don't get quite as much love as the track does, and it is really disappointing. And I have chatted to a few people in broadcasting about it, and I understand how tricky it is with 100 meters goes off at 7 p.m. in the evening, and it is, it's going to go off at that time, and all the competitors can fit in one TV screen and off they go. And it's the same with every track. Whereas the pole vault, we might start at 7 p.m. and we might finish at 9:30 p.m. You don't know when Katerina Stefanidi might clear a 490 bar. You don't know whether Sandy Morris is going to clear a 5-meter bar. You don't know whether that could be at 7:30 or 9:30. And I understand that's really difficult. But with today's technology, and I think since I've been in coronavirus lockdown, I've actually seen how crazy the technology is that's out there. I don't understand why we couldn't have dual TVs. If you want to watch the pole vault, you can click this button. If you want to watch bar shim in the high jump, you click this button. I feel like that absolutely could happen. I know Vinco, for example, when I'm tuning in to watch the under 20 champs or books, I can click on a link so I can watch the pole vault. And then if I see that somebody's running the 100 meters, I click back to the track, and there I am on the track. So I don't understand why some of the bigger broadcasters can't do that and show the athletes. So I definitely feel like there's scope to do it. And as a field eventer, who's in a pretty exciting event, it is very disappointing that we don't get the exposure we maybe deserve. And I think for me, the most disappointing thing, and I also talk to broadcasters about this, is there's thousands of kids in the UK that want to run the 100 meters, that want to run the 1500 meters. You go to a BMC and you just see how many athletes are doing the 800 and 1500 meters, and that's because they can tune in and watch Laura Muir, Mo Farah competing, whereas like you said in your question, you might get a glimpse of me once going over the bar, and that's just more frustrating for me, is that kids aren't getting into my event. There's not the same opportunities there, which again, it seems like a bit of a vicious circle, and it is quite disappointing. I've got a question here. What other things can you do besides pole vaulting? And a lot of people have asked me what's my background in sport, and did I do any athletics before pole vault? And I've always been really, really sporty. I did football from the age of 3 to 5. Then I went to gymnastics 5 to 12 years old. Then back into football 12 till 15. And then throughout my high school, I was in the rounders team, the netball team, the football team, gymnastics, cheerleading. I literally was a bit of a child that was just mad for sport, and it was just being active, playing team sports was kind of what I loved doing. um, and then it was just around when I was 14, 15, I started athletics, and again, nobody did pole vault at the club. We don't even think we had any poles or a pole vault mat. um, so I would do the high jump, the hurdles, the shot put, kind of anything the club needed. And it was just by accident that I went into the pole vault and tried it, because the club was like, this is a bit ridiculous. We're going to Northern League competitions. We don't have anyone in the pole vault, and we're missing out on points that we need. So I thought, why not give it a go? And did, and that's how I just got into it. But other things that I can do besides pole vault is I can make a pretty good coffee. Um, Coffee is a big passion of mine, and I volunteered in a coffee shop for 6 months to a year when I lived in Cardiff, and they taught me how to make the coffee. I'd serve coffee to the customers, and that was pretty cool insight into the world other than athletics, which was quite good. Um, so I've got a question here, that they saw me in Glasgow 2019 in the indoors, um, and they're asking a bit about the landing of the pole vault pit. And to be honest, I do get asked this quite a lot, and I think I underestimate landing down from 5 meters in the air, and even Mondo lands from 650 in the air onto a mat, and it's just something you've learnt to do from a kid. And I think people watch the pole vault, and because it is so complicated, and I mean, when you watch Mondo do it, it looks so effortless. You think, how on earth has he got to that? And pole vault is such a craft. It takes years and years and years. I mean, it takes 6 months to even have a little bend in the pole, let alone the big bends that we get, that you probably only get there after 18 months. And if you imagine, when we start, we're landing from 1 meter, and then we land from 2 meters. And I think as pole vaulters, you just underestimate on the journey. You just get on with it and you just do it. And we're kind of crazy to do the pole vault anyway. So landing on a mat from 5 meters for us is more fun than scary. And yeah, you've asked, does it damage your shoulders and elbows? No. The only risk is that you land on your feet and hurt your knee. And I've seen that happen a couple of times, where people bail out and they land on the feet on the mat and they've dislocated the knee or hurt the knee. And I think that's the only thing to be wary of, is don't land on your feet, land on your bum, land on your back, and that way you won't get hurt. I've seen someone's just put, it's not a question, but I love your pole vaulting picture behind you, and that's actually the from the Doha final last year, and it was a present from Mizuno. And yeah, it's really, really cool. And this is kind of like our stretching therapy room. So we thought it'd look really cool here. So thank you for saying that. I had a couple of questions from Kat Stefanini and Mitch. Thank you very much. Um, they've asked, how is Paul handling you being home all the time? I mean, I could probably throw that question back at you guys, but you guys are probably pros at it. I mean, we're just, it's like I read on the news, on a serious note, I read on the news today that people are really worried that it's really bad for divorces and kind of relationships. But so many people have said that this time that they're now spent at home has made their relationship so much stronger. And I feel like me spending time at home with Paul has been awesome. He's been doing all the training with me, which has been great for my morale, because he's an endurance runner and I'm making him do speed power work, which he isn't very good at. So that's good for starters. But yeah, I think for the majority of people, because it's such a tricky time, we're not forced to stay at home for no reason. Like, this is a really challenging time for the world, and I think it is, more than anything, bringing everyone together and making everyone be nicer to each other and do more stuff together. So I think it's a good thing. Kat has also said, how long do you think you can go without vaulting without feeling like it will affect you too much? And I think this is one of the questions. Well, this is one of the issues that a lot of athletes around the world are having. And it was more of a stress before the Olympics got cancelled. So before the Olympics got cancelled, the likes of Kat, I know, me, a couple of other people around Europe were literally confined to their house, which means you can't run, you can't do pole vault at all. And that was a big worry because there were people around the world still pole vaulting, and it's kind of the same situation now. I see it's kind of not everywhere in the world is the same. I know some people in America are still pole vaulting. I know some people in Europe have still got the ability to pole vault and sprint. And it is a big stress as an athlete knowing that you can't do that and you don't know when you're going to be able to do that. And if competitions are still going on in September and October, that's really worrying, because I'm sure Kat would agree that it's not just say our facilities open in June. We can't do a competition 2 weeks later. If we've had 2 or 3 months off pole vault, it's going to take another 2 or 3 months to progress all the way back, maybe not even to full approach in 2 to 3 months. So it is a kind of stressful time. And the hard thing for me is pole vault is what I love. Like, I obviously love doing competitions, but for me, there's no better feeling than just doing a pole vault session and the feelings of being upside down on the pole. And it is really sad that we can't do this. And I mean, I've had lots of injuries where I've been out for 6 months or I've not been able to pole vault for 3 months. So I reckon 2 to 3 months and I should be okay. But even just missing 2 weeks straight of pole vault is going to affect me, because now when I go back to training, and again, I'm sure Kat's the same, you're going to start from 4 steps. Then the next week, you're going to go 4 and 6 steps. Then the next week, 6 and 8 steps, because there's no way with the forces that goes through your body as a pole vaulter. I can't replicate that at home right now. So I'm going to have to progress really slowly, because otherwise I'm going to get injured and then I won't be able to compete and even jeopardize 2021 then. Let's go back to a couple of other questions that I got from Instagram. Which part of the jump do you work on / focus on the most, and why? And that was actually from Katie Najot, so thanks for that. For me, I've worked tirelessly for the last 4 to 5 years on my run up and getting a run structure, because back in 2012, I used to just stand at the end of the run and I'd just run as fast as I could. And that just wasn't very efficient. I'd run out of steam halfway down the run and I'd actually be slowing down into takeoff. And one of our big philosophies is to bring as much speed as you can over the last 4 steps. So if I do a comparison of, if you're running from, let's say 12 steps, if you accelerate as hard as you can for 6 steps and then are slowing down for the last 6 steps, think of the speed you're hitting the pole. Whereas even if you did a jog or strided the first 6 steps, but then accelerated as fast as you could over the last 6, you're probably bringing in way more speed, therefore hitting the pole sweeter and probably able to use a much bigger pole. So for us, the key is as much speed as you can over the last 6 steps, transferring it into the pole. And that's what I focused on really for the last 5 years. And I'm sure Scott has other ideas, but I seem to have been able to nail that finally. So now what we're working on is, once I've left the ground at takeoff, is to swing upside down as fast as you can. Now, if you go and watch any of the boys, Sam, Mondo, Renault, as soon as their foot leaves the ground, they are swinging hard upside down and trying to be vertical on the pole. Now that for me is what I've been working on, because as soon as you can beat the pole will then cash you up instead of spit you out into the bar. So that's what we've been focusing on. I'm going to do a couple more. Who is your favorite athlete? That's a really tricky question. I've obviously talked about all the pole vault girls and how we get on really well. So that's just a given that all of those are my favorite girls. But there's a couple of athletes out there that have a really, really good attitude, and that's what I aspire to be like. For example, you have Christian Taylor, who is just, he's done everything. He's won Olympic gold medals, world gold medals, you know, you name it, he's done it. And he's just so humble, takes the time to say hi in the corridor. He gives so much back to the sport. And that for me is what I look up to and I aspire to be. Another one who's exactly the same is Barshim. And he, again, has just always been really friendly, always takes the time out to say, you know, hi, how you doing? And again, it's that kind of attitude that I myself aspire to be like. So those are the kind of qualities that I look in like a role model. So I've got a question here from John Mulkeen, and I can see questions here from Cass Stefanidi. I'll get to you in a moment. What would you say is more frustrating, missing a season through injury or missing a season due to a pandemic? That's a really good question because me and Coach Scott Simpson have talked about this a lot. Because I've always had injuries and been forced to miss seasons, then when we've come to, I remember it was, I think it must have been 2017 or 2018. He asked me, shall we miss the indoor season and focus on the outdoors? And in my head, I was just like, no, like I've missed so many competitions. Why would we do that? And he always says, what, you know, choose to miss a season rather than be forced into it with an injury. And I guess this is kind of similar, like with an injury, you're absolutely forced. There's no, you know, you can't compete if you've fractured your foot or you've hurt your shoulder. Whereas the pandemic is a little bit different because you can still train. And, you know, I'm sure like I said, people in America are still pole vaulting. I can do stuff in the gym. I'm sure somebody has access to a field, can still sprint. So there's all these varying different levels of what people can achieve. But what I would say still, what's frustrating more is missing through injury, because I feel like in my head, an injury never really happens by mistake unless you fall off a wall and break your ankle, which again, that's still your fault. But for me, all the injuries that have occurred to me, I believe it's happened to me because I've not listened to my body or I've not respected my body in certain ways. So I definitely feel like missing the season through injury is still more frustrating. Kat Stefanidi has said, what is your favorite dessert? With the American spelling, by the way. And it would definitely have to be cheesecake, without a shadow of a doubt. I've got a question here from Morris Fox. How does your mindset alter in competition, or do you follow a game plan? So for me, I'm a very organized, methodical, kind of OCD type person, and I have a timeline that I adhere to before every competition, and it's really, really detailed in that I've got my time I wake up, my alarm, then my breakfast, then when I have a snack, what the snack is, when I'm having coffee, etc. And for me, that's to take all the stress out of my mind, and that's kind of like my game plan. And in terms of my mindset alter in a competition, I just basically rely on my coach in this regard, in that if there's any decisions that need to be made, for example, if someone skipped and I don't know whether I need to skip, or should I take the next ball, what height should I open at, or I had a really good warm up, should I open higher? I give all those responsibilities to my coach because I feel like he's way more rational and calm in a competition situation. So I would just, for any athletes out there, is have a conversation with your coach, or a coach, if you're listening, have a conversation with your athlete and just decide, if we're in the moment and things are getting a bit stressful, who is going to have the decision making kind of responsibility, because you want both of you to feel settled and calm in that situation, and there not be any external worry or pressure type thing. And that's what I would just say. Just had a question from a 12-year-old saying that they're doing pole vault and they jumped 315, and that's really nice for me to hear. I actually only started pole vaulting when I was 16 years old, So to hear that people, whenever I hear youngsters getting involved, I just think that's really great. I remember when I first started, when I was 16 years old, I would tell people, oh yeah, I've started doing the pole vault now. Nobody, especially in the UK, nobody would know what this event is. And I've slowly seen the change over the years and it getting more and more popular to the point where I now walk through the airport and people say, oh, they do pole vault instead of, oh, you do canoeing or whatever. And yeah, I think it's great that younger kids can get involved, and I think me and Scott have pushed quite hard the progression of youngsters in the UK, and I would just advise anyone out there who's young doing it or would want to get into doing it is it's such a fun event. It's so cool. It's different. It's scary but fun at the same time, and I would just say just go for it because it is. I'm obviously biased, but the best event. All right, I'm going to do one more question, and it is going to be what is the most important thing to be as successful as a vaulter? I'm going to summarize this and just say that the priority for me to be successful is to love what you do, enjoy it, and have fun. For me, when I lost the love of it and I didn't enjoy it because I was putting so much pressure on myself, it's not good. You don't actually perform good. You don't perform any better, and that's just the worst thing. So I think first and foremost, enjoy it, love it, because that's just going to make you progress so much quicker. And it for me, when I started, it was a social thing. I loved the people who I was doing with. I loved the event. I loved the training, and I just propelled. And I think that's important. But to be actually good at pole vault, I think secondary you need to work on speed. You need to be running in as fast as you can. Second, you need to have a whole body's kind of strength in terms of when you're in the gym, you do upper body, core, work on your back, your legs. You need to be strong all over. That's in like the simplest form. And then thirdly, you need to have good spatial or body awareness. So doing things like gymnastics, yoga, things like that, where you're putting yourself in positions where you're upside down, you don't really know where you are, that really helps with the pole vault. So I think work on those three: speed, strength, like spatial awareness, but first and foremost, make sure you're having fun, enjoying yourself, because that for me is the most important thing. Cool. Thank you so much for joining me. This is going to be recorded, so I will post it so everyone can have a look at it. Cool. Thank you.
On your marks. Get set.